Have you ever felt like something in your life was quietly draining you, and you couldn't explain why? You check your phone, you sit in the same room, you hang out with the same people. Everything feels normal on the outside, but deep down, you feel off, tired, lost, like you're slowly forgetting who you really are. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, warned us. It's not always your thoughts that destroy you. It's the places you allow yourself to stay. Mentally, emotionally, and physically. Some places don't just hurt you, they rewrite you quietly, slowly, permanently. This video isn't about avoiding bad neighborhoods. It's about avoiding mental traps. Dangerous places Jung believed could weaken your mind, kill your growth, and steal your strength before you even realize it's happening. Here are 7 dangerous places Carl Jung said you must avoid to stay. Mentally strong, let's begin. The first place is one you might already be stuck in. It's called the echo chamber. This is where every voice around you sounds like your own. Everyone agrees with you. Everyone thinks like you. And that feels good for a while. But over time, something happens. You stop thinking for yourself. Your beliefs aren't yours anymore. They're recycled, reposted, repeated. Carl Jung warned about this. The danger of collective thinking. When everyone around you is just like you, you stop growing. You stop questioning. You become mentally soft. The echo chamber feels safe, but it's a trap. It gives you comfort while stealing your ability to evolve. Look at your social media, your friend group, the news you read. Are you being challenged or just confirmed? Mental strength doesn't come from always being right. It comes from being willing to be wrong and learning from it, but the echo chamber kills curiosity. It kills growth. And if you stay in it too long, you forget how to think in new ways. And once you lose that, you're wide open to the next trap. The second place Jung warned about is the comparison arena. This is the space where your value depends on how well you measure up to others, where someone else's success feels like your failure, where you scroll through other people's lives and feel like your own isn't enough. Jung said, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. But today, it's the unlived lives we see online that we carry. The fake lifestyles, the perfect bodies, the constant wins. You see these things every day, and without knowing it, you start shaping your life to match them, not because it makes you happy, but because it feels like survival. You change your pace, your dreams, even your identity, just to keep up. But the more you compare, the more you disconnect from who you really are. Jung believed in individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself. But in the comparison arena, that process gets destroyed. You stop asking, what do I want? And instead you ask, what do they have that I don't? Here's the truth. You don't win the comparison game by being better. You win by leaving the game altogether. You win by becoming so deeply connected to your own path that other people's noise doesn't move you anymore. But just when you think you've found clarity, you enter a new danger zone. The third place is the masked circle. This is where everyone plays a role. Everyone wears a mask. They act strong. They act happy. They act perfect. And you do the same, just to belong. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social mask we wear to survive in society. But if you wear it too long, you forget it's a mask, and you lose who you are underneath. You laugh at things you don't find funny. You agree with things you don't believe in. You hide your pain to protect your image. It could be your workplace, your school, your relationship, even your family. And the worst part, it feels normal, but over time it kills your authenticity. And when authenticity dies, so does real confidence. Jung believed we need the mask, but only if we remember it's not the real us. Take it off sometimes. Speak honestly. Be uncomfortable, because mental strength doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being real. And if you don't, you risk stepping into the next danger zone. The fourth place is the past that never ends. We all have a past. Pain, regret, trauma. But some people don't just remember the past. They live there. They replay old mistakes. They cling to who they used to be. They drag yesterday into today and wonder why the future feels so heavy. Carl Jung spent much of his life studying the unconscious, the hidden parts of our mind that control us without us knowing, and he found something powerful. If you don't face your past, it will keep showing up. In your habits, in your fears, in your relationships. You can't escape it by running. You can only escape it by understanding it. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That means healing doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from facing, from learning, from releasing. You are not your past. You are what you choose to become next. But to become something new, you have to escape the fifth place, the comfort zone. This is the place where nothing grows. It feels safe, easy, predictable. But every time you choose comfort over challenge, you trade your potential for security. Carl Jung believed in what he called individuation, the idea that every person has a path that's theirs alone, and the only way to walk it is to grow. But growth never happens in comfort. It happens in fear, in risk, in the unknown. Comfort isn't peace. It's quiet decay. And if you stay there too long, life stops moving. Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait until you're ready. You'll never feel ready. Move now. Start small. Face what scares you. That's where real strength is born. The sixth place is the circle of chaos. This is when your life is full of noise, distractions, drama, conflict. You're always busy, but never fulfilled, always connected, but never present. Jung saw this as a defense mechanism, a way to avoid silence. Because in silence, we meet ourselves, and that can be terrifying, so we fill our time. We stay loud. We avoid stillness, but stillness is where healing begins, where clarity shows up, where truth is found. Chaos might make you feel alive, but it also keeps you lost. Turn the volume down. Unplug. Be alone sometimes, because silence is not empty. It's full of answers. And finally, the seventh place, the most dangerous one of all, the place where you abandon yourself. This is when you know something is wrong, but you ignore it. You stay in the wrong job, the wrong relationship. The key, wrong life, because it's easier than change. Jung believed that the soul speaks to us, not in words, but in emotions, in anxiety, in depression, in that quiet feeling of this isn't me. But most people numb that voice. They call it weakness. They silence it with distraction. But that voice is your last defense. When you ignore it, you don't just lose direction, you lose yourself. Mental strength isn't about pushing through everything. It's about listening, trusting, and having the courage to walk away when something no longer fits who you are becoming. So ask yourself, are you living a life that belongs to you, or are you trapped in one of these 7 dangerous places? The echo chamber, the comparison arena, the masked circle, the endless past, the comfort zone, the chaos trap, the place where you abandon your soul. Carl Jung didn't want us to run from life. He wanted us to wake up to it, to face the hidden forces, to reclaim our minds, to stop being controlled and start becoming conscious. Because if you don't choose where your mind lives, someone else will, and by then it's too late. Choose strength, choose clarity, choose you. You tell yourself it's just easier this way. Just smile, just go along with it. But the more you wear that mask, the more it becomes part of you. Not a costume, but a second skin. And slowly, without even realizing it, you lose sight of who you really are. Carl Jung warned us, true mental strength doesn't come from pretending. It comes from facing your truth, even the parts you'd rather hide. He called it shadow work, the act of facing your hidden fears, your flaws, your wounds. But in many social circles today, you're rewarded not for being real, but for being easy to digest, for fitting the mold, for shutting up and smiling. Have you ever walked away from a group not feeling energized but drained, not because they were toxic, but because you had to perform? That mask doesn't just hide you, it isolates you. You don't just lose connection with others, you lose connection with yourself. And here's the cruelest part, the more you blend in, the more invisible you become. You fade out bit by bit until there's nothing left but the performance, and that disappearance doesn't always begin in public. No, it often starts at home. The silent home. This is one of the most dangerous places for the mind. It's the kind of place that looks fine from the outside, quiet, orderly, normal, but inside, it's ice cold. Love is supposed to be there, but it's never spoken. Emotions exist, but they're never expressed. Everything is surface level, safe, sterile, silent. Carl Jung taught that our emotional patterns from childhood build the blueprint of our inner world. If those patterns are made in silence and emotional absence, the foundation isn't strength, it's suppression. And suppressed emotions don't go away. They wait, they fester, until one day, when you're vulnerable, they explode. Have you ever been in a place where you couldn't say how you really felt? Where being honest meant being ignored, or even punished? You learn to hide everything. You smile when it hurts. You nod when you want to scream. You survive, but you don't live. That survival becomes your identity. But here's the truth. Coping isn't healing, and silence isn't peace. In the silent home, pretending becomes second nature. You master the art of looking fine, but beneath it all, your mind is constantly fighting between what you feel and what you're allowed to show. That tension, it wears you down. Because you can't be mentally strong if you've never been emotionally safe. Jung believed healing starts with expression, with turning inward, not running away. But in a home where vulnerability is a weakness, expression becomes forbidden. So the silence around you eventually becomes the silence inside you. Ask yourself, when was the last time someone really heard you? Not because you shouted, not because you broke down, but because they cared enough to listen. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine being somewhere so loud, outside or inside, that you can't even hear your own thoughts. That's the next danger zone, the chaotic space. This is where overstimulation takes control. It's a life full of noise, clutter, constant distraction, where everything is urgent, everything is loud, but nothing has meaning. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." But how do you look inside when your attention is being pulled in 100 directions? This space isn't always about physical noise. Sometimes it's your to-do list, your endless obligations, your buzzing phone, your racing thoughts. You move fast, reply quickly, stay busy, because if you slow down, the silence might speak. And what it says might terrify you. Have you ever filled your day with tasks, not because they mattered, but because you couldn't stand being alone with your mind? That's not productivity, that's escape. In the chaotic space, stillness feels dangerous, rest feels lazy, reflection feels useless, but the human mind isn't made for non-stop sprinting. It needs rhythm, it needs quiet moments to feel, to process, to heal. When you don't give it that, you lose clarity. You become scattered, impatient, overwhelmed, and here's the trap. You start to mistake movement for progress. You think staying busy means you're doing well, but Jung taught that meaning isn't found in speed, It's found in depth, in stillness, in facing the void inside you. The chaotic space seduces you with urgency. But when the dust settles, it leaves you hollow. And when the noise stops, when you're finally alone, you might realize you no longer recognize yourself. You've become a stranger. And that brings us to the next, and possibly most dangerous, place of all, the abandoned self. This isn't a room you walk into. It's not outside. It's something that happens deep within, slowly, quietly. You stop listening to your instincts. You stop honoring your feelings. You start saying yes when your soul screams no. You begin to abandon yourself, piece by piece. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious mind stores the parts of ourselves we reject, suppress, or fear. But here's the truth. Those parts don't vanish. They fight back. They come out as anxiety, as depression, as self-sabotage, as illness. They find a way. Have you ever stayed in a job, a relationship, a routine, not because it was right, but because it was safe? That's the abandoned self. You trade truth for comfort. You choose numbness over honesty. You adapt to survive. But in doing so, you disconnect from your soul. The hardest part, most people don't even realize they're doing it. They call it being responsible. They call it growing up. But it's not growth if it costs you your soul. Carl Jung spoke about individuation, the process of becoming your true self. Not the mask, not the role you play, but the real you. But that process can't begin until you stop running, until you stop performing, until you stop abandoning yourself in tiny, everyday betrayals. Because if you don't reclaim who you are, someone else will shape you into what they want. And that's not life. That's slow death. So pause for a second and ask yourself this: when was the last time you truly checked in with yourself? Not with your job, not your friends, not the world, just you. Are you still in there? Or have you left little pieces of yourself behind, one after another, just to fit in, just to belong? Because the longer you live like that, the harder it gets to come back home to yourself. But even if you do start the journey back, even if you begin to remember who you were before the world told you who to be, there's still one last place that can trap you. A place so hidden, so uncomfortable, most people pretend it doesn't even exist. It's not loud. It's not obvious. It's the place you don't talk about, the place you avoid. Carl Jung called it the shadow, but you might know it as the room in your mind you've never dared to open. The forbidden room. This is where the past lives. The pain you never processed, the shame you buried deep, the tears you were told not to cry, the rage you were told to swallow, and because it hurt too much, you locked it away. You said, "I'll deal with this later," but later never came. And now that pain, that old silent pain, it doesn't stay buried. It grows. It shows up in your relationships, in your fears, in the way you talk to yourself when no one else is around. Ever exploded over something small and thought, where did that come from? That was the forbidden room cracking open. Ever kept repeating toxic patterns you swore you'd never fall into again? That's not weakness. That's the shadow pulling your strings behind the curtain. Jung believed that what we don't face controls us. You can ignore your pain, yes, but it will not ignore you. What you avoid becomes your master. The pain you silence becomes the pain you pass on. Most people spend their entire lives walking around that room, tiptoeing, pretending it's not there, and they call that being strong. But real strength isn't pretending. It's facing what hurts with your eyes open, and that starts with opening that door, slowly, gently but honestly, not to destroy yourself, but to understand yourself, to take back the pieces you left in the dark and bring them home. Because here's the truth, your shadow doesn't want to ruin you. It just wants to be seen. And if you don't integrate it, if you keep avoiding what you feel, that pain will shape you anyway. It will control who you choose, what you chase, and who you become. But when you bring it into the light, that's when healing starts. So ask yourself this: what part of you have you locked away? What memory, what truth, what version of yourself is still waiting for permission to be heard? You've now seen all 7 of these dangerous places, some outside you, some buried deep inside. But here's what most people never realize. You can live in more than one of them at the same time. Maybe you've been stuck in the echo chamber, trying to sound like everyone else while your real voice fades away. Maybe you've been sitting in the silent home, craving to be heard, but too afraid to speak. Or maybe you've locked yourself in the forbidden room, and you're scared to open the door, not because you're weak, but because you don't know if you'll survive what's behind it. But Carl Jung knew the truth. You will survive it, because what's inside that room is still you. And you're not too broken, you're just unfinished. Healing doesn't mean erasing your darkness. It means learning to carry it with grace. Mental strength doesn't come from hiding your wounds. It comes from being brave enough to clean them. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be aware. And awareness starts with naming what was once hidden. You don't need to run away from the world to protect your mind, but you do need to choose your spaces carefully. The energy you allow in, the people you surround yourself with, and the parts of your soul you've been taught to fear. Being mentally strong isn't about pretending everything's fine. It's about having the guts to walk away from the places that are quietly destroying you, even if they've become comfortable. So I ask you now, really ask you, which of these 7 places have you stayed in for too long? And more importantly, what would it take for you to finally walk away? Let me know in the comments. Your story might be the one that helps someone else recognize their own. If this video hit home, don't just keep it to yourself. Share it, because someone out there needs this more than you know. And always remember, your strength will never be built in comfort. It will always be forged in choice. The choice to turn inward, the choice to stop running, the choice to face the dark and walk forward anyway.